got into an argument on the bus about a song, and he hit me. It was like an open hand, but still enough to bust my lip. It took me to the ground. It was like, because he said he was a god.
He actually said that?
He said, I'm a god. Called me a faggot, and then while he's raging on top of me, I was like, yo, you gotta hit me, just hit me. Because I wasn't fighting it. That's the thing about fighting is a lot like sex. It's very different, without consent, it's a different act, right? So like, if I don't agree to fight you, we're not in a fight. You're just assaulting the person.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Benny Goodman. I want to be really solemn today because we're going to talk about some serious, heavy-ass shit here on the show 2020. I'm here with my partners, I think my hostages in this situation that's going on with the Bad Wolves, Cory and Siobhán. How are you guys, man? Are you guys hanging in there?
Yeah.
I'm a little disturbed by the way you're speaking right now.
The ominous voice.
I'm disturbed by Tommy Vext and all the weird ass shit that fucker's saying, and I didn't know who the real Bad Wolves were after this last week.
It's very fitting. I mean, we got into some deep shit with Doc about what was going on with Bad Wolves, getting the new singer, stuff with Tommy. So it was definitely a very eye-opening and insightful interview with a lot of emotion behind it. So we get into some really cool stuff.
Yeah, if you're not familiar, the boiled down point is that there was some drama. There's a singer leaving, singer coming in, and then a lot of social media shit blowing up over the last several weeks. So.
But I want to say that we touch upon something that's very important, and that's assault in this episode. And Doc really, I couldn't believe how open he was about this. And I want people to understand that we really appreciate Doc coming on our show and sharing, because I don't know, my jaw was on the floor.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. Part 1 with Doc Coyle right now.
Welcome to another episode of 2020. My name is Cory Peza, here as always with Siobhán Cronin and Benny Goodman. What's up, guys?
Hello.
Not much. Just coming back to life after a festival weekend.
I know. We'll have to get into some of that stuff. Last time we had our amazing guest on, I think we were still in the midst of a little bit of a global shutdown type of situation. But I do want to welcome back. We have only
had one amazing guest this entire 100 episodes, exactly. And he's back. So Thank you.
So welcome back, Mr. Doc Coyle of Bad Wolves, the X-Man podcast, and fellow Sound Talent Media.
The real Bad Wolves, by the way. The actual band, the Bad Wolves. If you guys are Googling this, there's some confusion on the internet. There is only one real Bad Wolves, and it contains Doc Coyle from a band called God Forbid, just so you guys know. Clarify.
Well, I'm wearing this shirt, so that's how you know. The back says real. And then this.
Oh, nice.
No.
That's awesome.
No, it's a Timberwolves jersey. It's like the Prince edition Minnesota Timberwolves jersey. So, I keep it real. Thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it. Even though it's not 2020 anymore. I know why y'all got that's an old ass fucking.
Well, you're getting 2020 right now online constantly by a megalomaniacal crazy person that's an X-Man. Is this ironic, Alanis Morissette? Because I just saw her the other night and she was amazing.
No, I was trying to explain to people because a lot of people will kind of come in and give you advice, how to handle it, and I get a lot of these. Doc, I hope you're well. We're thinking about you. Like your house just got flooded in like a hurricane, and you're sitting on top waiting for helicopters. They know you went through a rough time. So it's people check in, and actually, if you think about it, at least in rock, I just don't think this has ever happened. What we're going through. I think we are patient zero for this adventure. And if you're not clued into the all-night experience, you have no idea it's happening.
Dude, I just want to let you know. So I was on another podcast earlier, and I was talking about interviewing you, and he's like, have you been watching? So I went back, and I got my leftover food, and I went and literally went through the whole diatribe. And let me tell you, if I was Dr. Drew, I would be making some serious assumptions right now about your ex-singer. I'd be going online and be like, whoa, this dude has he's narcissistic, megalomaniacal, weird shit going on. Maybe some sociopathic things he's clearly a liar. I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, does he, I want to live in his head, dude.
You got enough.
There's a lot of room up there.
You need a machete and like a Gatling gun, and it could probably a dangerous space.
Listen, like The Cell. Jennifer Lopez is coming out.
No, but seriously, I try not to get into the kind of back and forth. I don't feel like it's listen, I've said a handful of things, but I always try and state it in the most kind of calm and measured. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, Obama's my man, so I'm like, look, I think the American people need to understand there's not
your interpreter. Where's
there's
Peel?
not a bull America. There's just United States America. I'm always trying to be the diplomat, and bring the people together. So, and I always say like, kind of one of the keys to, I think, dealing with conflict is not always to meet the energy of the people that are opposing you. So if someone comes in and they're an asshole, you don't have to be an asshole to them. You can set your own standard of your kind of energy and your attitude. So the truth is like, we got a new song out. It's blowing up, and it's just the beginning.
Yeah.
So that's like the reality on the ground. Listen, if people ask me questions, I'll answer questions, but I'm definitely not going to try and overly focus on that or get into a war of words, because the truth is, because of this divisive stuff with the fan base, they're like the kids in the divorce who don't want to see their parents argue. Mama, daddy's out higher. Right? So if we say anything, we're damned if we do, damned if we don't, right? If we don't say anything,
right,
then you're just getting beat up, right? And if you say something, it's like, look at them, just up in the fight, So it's like, it's a very odd position, So, but listen, I've never been anything like this, but you know what? I know when on the other end of it, I'm like, yo, I'm gonna be a much stronger, weathered person. You know what I'm saying? This will be my personal nom.
Yeah. Well, we know from talking to you last time that you're very thoughtful in terms of handling situations. You put a lot of thought into even studying history and similar events. You actually talked at the time. I don't know if you guys had made the decision yet, but you were talking about how you were looking for a new singer and how you weren't going to rush into it, how you're going to be very calculated and pay attention to, music history's previous singer replacements and things like that. So first off, after hearing the new single, good fucking choice. Great fucking choice.
Thank you.
And I don't know DL personally, but we're friends with All That Remains, and Jason Costa is a friend of ours, and he has spoken incredibly highly of him just as a person. So I think that, just from hearing him and knowing kind of his reputation, that seems like an amazing fit. So congratulations on that. Can you talk just a little bit maybe about the process of narrowing down that decision?
Well, the interesting thing is, when the split happened, we had a song, like an old Bad Wolf song that DL sent us a version of within like 24 hours. And so he was like, so it was like this crazy thing where everything happened. And I was like, what are we going to do? And all of a sudden you're like, the first thing you hear is basically there's no drop off in quality. And you're like, okay, we're like the worst version of this, at least on record, the band is basically keeping it rolling. Right. And then it's just a question of like personality and charisma and stage presence and all this other stuff that you obviously want out of someone. But then despite that, we went on, a 3-month kind of process of having demos submitted. We never went public. We never went, hey, singer in Ohio, send us your demos in. It was all like we were on the prowl, and then people who knew us would kind of hit us up. We didn't want it to be too public, and and the truth be told, man, I mean, for the style of music we do, because the band is so diverse, the band is so heavy in some regards and so kind of commercial and light in other regards, it's like trying to find individuals that can cover this range and then also have the look and have all those those things that you can't even really put your finger on. There's just not a lot of people out there that can do this stuff, right? That became really...
Cory's so mad at me. I interrupted you in the middle of an idea because I had an idea.
Yep, I see it.
But I was going to say, because there was a comment that you reminded me of. It's my favorite comment on the internet right now about you guys that was meant as an insult, and I think it's literally the best comment. Like if someone wrote this about me, I'd be stoked. They said, leave the Nickelbacking to Nickelback. First off, I love Nickelback.
Me too.
Secondly, I think some of the records are like the best sounding records. Third, all they've ever done is sell records and make people happy. 4, if you meet them, they're Canadian. They're super nice. 5, their favorite band is Slayer. 6, they make gajillions of dollars. 7, Devin Townsend, probably one of my favorite, most influential people on the planet, says he loves them. So for someone to say, like, you sound like Nickelback, it's basically saying, like, did you know that you made the Black Album by Metallica? Which, again, some people hate, but it's like one of the greatest things that's ever made. I listened to this new song, and I can't stop singing it. And if it's supposed to be obnoxiously awesome,
why do you sound angry about it?
I can't. I'm literally walking around my house going like, na 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 na. I'm like, these fuckers. It's like the song that won't get out of my head.
Earworm. Well, listen, it's funny that because there's definitely songs on the last record, and there were songs that we didn't write. It was like Tommy went and worked with other songwriters, and I think they're really good songs. You know, like "Killing Me Slowly" that has that kind of Nickelback vibe. You know, but I think with this record, you know, we kind of wanted to reclaim the sound a little bit. And it's a great sound, but let's sound like what we sound like, you know, as opposed to sounding like anyone or kind of, you know, so that, I mean, I think the only thing about that I think it kind of made the band feel a little more watered down on the last record, or at least regards to like radio and stuff like that, where you kind of, it sounds like whatever else is on the radio. And that's fine because they were successful, both, you know, that and Sober both at #1, but it didn't really, I didn't feel like it represented me. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that's just me personally, whereas Lifeline, and that's a little more on the commercial side of the record, it's still heavy. It's still ballsy. It's still, you know, I got to do a ripping guitar
your
solo.
Your solos rocks, dude. I was going to say, your solo awesome. Fucking rocks. It's not out of nowhere, but like all of a sudden I'm like, okay, it's good. It's good. Like, whoa, I can't even do that.
Yeah. But like people, but the thing is, like, you know, such and such will say, they didn't play on this song, they didn't play on that song. It's like, no one asked me, no one let me. Like, so like they would songs just be on the record and no one said, hey, Doc, I'll do a solo. So now I actually get the opportunity to do a solo. Turns out I can hit a note or two, you know, if given.
You're all right.
If you put me in the game, if you put me in the game, coach, I'll probably hit a couple shots. So
that's incredible. So what was, you know, how has the change been, you know, creating that music in this new perspective and new situation?
Well, keep in mind, you know, there was basically, when the split happened, there was basically a record that existed, more or less. But a lot of that, the record that was there was stuff that we weren't a part of, that we weren't allowed to be part of, stuff we didn't really want on the record. So we took about 2/3 of that stuff and then pretty much, you know, altered everything that was left over, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to be careful with my words, you know, and made sure it was our creation. And then we, you know, when we wrote a handful of other new songs, and there were even songs, there's probably, I don't even know, 8 songs that didn't even make the record that, I mean, really good stuff. You know, there's 2 B-sides that are great, a little bit kind of like right in that heavy point. But, you know, I mean, there's a song that DL wrote. He brought in all the music, you know. There are songs that, like one song is a song I wrote that when Tommy was in the band, like it wouldn't even be considered. So it's like, it's like we had to flush some shit out, and then it's like, okay, now, you know, the brother gets a chance to kind of do his thing. But it was really cool because of that, we only got to really scratch the surface of what we can do with DL. But there were songs like we go in, and they're literally at the beginning of the day, there'd be no vocals written, maybe a little, we'd have a little something, but we'd like write everything in a day or two, and all of a sudden you're really building the songs from a vocal and kind of melody standpoint and all that stuff. And it just seemed to work really well. But it's really going to be on the next record where we're like starting from scratch, whatever that means, even though we have all this leftover material. Because, you know, like me, I'm a very conceptual thinker, right? I'm big picture. I'm like, all right, guys, what's the story we're telling? What are we going for? Where I think some of the other guys are a little more, they just go where I want everything to be part of a bigger idea, you know, and that sometimes gets a little bit more difficult to do. But one of my big goals of this record, like I said, not that I'm like the #1 songwriter in the band, but just in terms of trying to be like an executive producer or is like, I wanted stuff to fit more in a singular lane as opposed to being ADD, where there's a song on our last record called Forward Friend, and then it's the heaviest song on the record. It's right next to Sober, which sounds like you hear that shit in Walmart. So it's like, and that's cool and all,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's much easier to divide your audience when it's so varied, and it's varied on this record, but for some reason it feels more congruent.
Yeah, I think that's important. That this, all our favorite records, for those of us that actually grew up listening to entire records and not just singles, there has to be some sort of story, if not a completely blanket monotone voice, but a story that goes through an entire record. That's something that with our band Lost Symphony was paramount, because we don't have lyrics. So we spent a lot of time trying to find a thread, and considering our stuff was recorded over several years.
We actually made an effort not to make it too different, because we were changing singers. We wanted to do things that felt kind of in the Bad Wolves canon, so to speak, so that it wasn't like jarring when they heard the new singer. So on the next record, I was like, I feel like when you're in this position where you have, the spotlight's on you and you can actually do something different with the genre and break boundaries. Like, I want to take shit to the next level, but we kind of like, I don't say we played it safe, but we didn't want to go too far. There's definitely songs where it's like, oh, here's a new thing, but we didn't go crazy with that. And I'd kind of like to go crazy with that at some point, but I wanted people who listen to the band to go, okay, this makes sense from what I know.
Well, something really interesting is, DL from the Acacia Strain, and he's a sick guitarist, dude. And like now, he's like replacing a frontman that a lot of people thought defined your band, which clearly is not the case, right? And he fits not only right in, but it's like, dude, what's that like as a guitar player watching another guitarist walk in and then just be like, I'm gonna sing, and then he fucking owns it? Is he looking at you going, I should play rhythm? Or is he like, you're Eddie Van Halen and he's Sammy Hagar, I don't need to play right now?
You know what's funny is, like, so he actually wrote a chorus on our last record called Kill the Consumerist for us. But even before that, when the first record came out, he like blew up my DMs how much he loved the band. He was like, I'm gonna join your band, I'll be the third guitar player. Like he just loved Bad Wolves as a guitar player, and so it's kind of ironic it all came around. But honestly, now it's like having an Adam D in the band, or a Devin Townsend or something like this. Just someone who can write, who can produce, who can, because there's songs on the record that, he did some guitar playing and production stuff in his studio. And, and some, I think, he did some vocals at his studio as well. So it's like having like that, just a one-man band, basically. And you're adding that to kind of this already really deep talent pool.
It's like Mike Patton showing up with all of his like controllers and his guitar and his friends. He's like, I know the executioners. I can do everything you need. By the way, here's Synchronicity by the Police. Here you go. This is going to be our next record.
Yeah. And the truth is, even as a vocalist, I'm like hearing what he's doing now. I'm like, well, what happens when we go on the road for a year and he like is developing his voice and singing all the time? He's just going to get better at that, And as far as him playing on stage, I mean, he can do whatever the hell he wants. I don't give a damn. You know what I'm saying? Take some load off of me. You know what I'm saying? I'll take this song off while you go out there and shred.
Dude, I'm going to tell you right now, you guys, if you decide to pull out 3 guitars for a song and just go extra, I'm telling you right now, especially with someone as good as DL, that's fucking relentless. And I can't wait. Because one of the things I loved about God Forbid, and also with this new song, is that you guys just sound huge. Like your guitar sound is just like, here's my balls on your head. It's just like, oh!
Sexual assault.
Yes,
assault.
yes.
Don't put your balls
sexual
on anyone's
chocolate,
head.
bro.
It was assault in a good way, though, because when I first listened to it, I'm like, man, this is awesome. It's so, sorry, that sounded terrible. But yeah, like super riffy.
His balls are salty. We get it.
Siobhán likes to be assaulted with salty balls.
No, anyway, not to go backwards.
Canceled.
But
We're canceled. Thank you.
I think we've been canceled. We have Benny Goodman on the podcast, so we've been canceled long ago. But speaking of being canceled, we had a funny article that we found today. We had talked to Satchel from Steel Panther, who's also going through, a member change, trying to find someone new. And, you had mentioned that you had your eyes on a few people, didn't really put out, word out into the public looking for someone. How... can you go a little bit more into the process of how you chose DL and,
Sure.
Maybe some of the things that you looked out for? What sealed the deal for you when it came to him?
So what we did was, we got a bunch of instrumentals of some old songs. And then, we'd send them, we get in touch with people, they reach out to us, reach out to them, send them material and say, hey, just, record these 3 songs. We just wanted to hear a range of like ballady type stuff, kind of mid-range, kind of aggro rock, and then some heavier stuff. And so we probably got, I don't know, like 30 submissions that way, you know, because we weren't just gonna like let just anyone do, unless we kind of saw your, you know, we check out your stuff, either your band or if you're on YouTube or whatever, TikTok and see, you know, but dude, but we were, I mean, I would spend whole nights just like on YouTube, on looking up hashtag covers, you know, people doing this. And truth be told, I think that the fantasy was that, oh, there's just going to be some like 25-year-old kid from like London who's, you know, looks like Billy Idol, who can just do you know, like this like diamond just sitting there.
And then you find the guy from Journey who's like from Vietnam or whatever, Thailand or something like that. He sounds like Steve Perry, but it's just strange.
No, but it's the truth is most of those people that have that, but they're already in bands, right? They've more or less, it's very rare when someone's just completely undiscovered, or you have someone who's really cool, they're great, but maybe what they do doesn't quite fit. Like something with us, like we put, for us, the singing ability was, we put vastly over screaming. Like screaming was, you need to do something. You can't be able to not scream at all and have some type of heavy voice. But, you know, we view ourselves as a metal band that also is a rock band. So it's like the voice is number one, you know? And then after that, it was just like the actual tone of the voice. Because there were people who sent in great tapes, but the tone of the voice just didn't fit the band. It was maybe a little too thin or not. And the main thing is just it had to sound soulful.
Can I tell you what I like about DL that I noticed right off the bat is that he has like almost like a vibrato, like the way he pulls off notes. I almost want to say it's kind of Mike Patton-y, like where he has this kind of like rough vibrato, and it's like where you might think, oh, this is auto-tune. There's so much soul at the end of every one of his notes. I was like, oh, this dude has like a vibe, because you're just so used to like everyone having like that same auto-toned perfect production voice. Like that's a thing now, like that cookie cutter stuff. And like he like differentiates enough where I would know DL now because of your music. Yeah,
but that to me was like something that we wanted to keep consistent. Like, well, there are some dudes like, you know, offense, it's like it just sounds a little too white. It's a little too white. We need a little, you know.
Is that why you never called me? I tried.
It's a little too. That's all right.
Mambo number 5 wasn't your bag. I thought you would like Mambo number 5.
So my dad, who is, you know, who is no longer with us, but was white as the day is long. If Godfrey wasn't playing well and he come to the show, he goes, "You guys sounded white today." Like, and it was not a compliment.
It was my side today.
He's like, but he would say that about our drummer who was black. He's like, Cory was playing white today.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh. That's got to be tough though, because like even over the internet, speaking of finding people, let's say it's somebody that you don't know or that kind of new, it's so much stuff can be so heavily produced, even if you're doing like a bedroom recording.
Okay, so that brings me to the next step. So then once we had a bunch of like 30 of those, we whittled it down to about 6 people to see in person, and we got in a room and we jammed. And then you started to see like, okay, this is kind of separated, you know, the wheat from the chaff, as it were. And it actually made me really realize, man, these songs, especially the older songs, are really tough to sing, man. There's a lot wide range, really high, a lot of, you know, varieties, a lot of speed and stuff. So it was the people, you know, when you get to see it in the room, and, you know, our setup is okay, but it almost like it didn't do any favors, you know? And then we whittled down to like 3 people. And then we had people track new songs, and we're like, okay, it's cool. You can sing on the old songs. It's really, how do you sound on new material? And, you know, and those 3 people were great. They're all phenomenal. I mean, I almost feel like we probably would have been successful almost with, you know, like with either of them, because they were so talented. But it was a unanimous decision with DL. And I think it was, you know, just the tone of his voice just felt the most correct. And the way he got along with the band was so easy and familiar. And that's something, you know, that I think is a little underrated, right? Like that, just the chemistry and like knowing. And honestly, the thing I didn't even really factor into it at the time, with everything that's going on right now, his temperament is like he just, nothing bothers him, you know? And now he's like, people, you know, he's getting harassed, people sending death threats and shit. It's like not cool, you know? You know, it's the ultimate not cool, but I don't. That's the one thing I think that actually sets him apart is I don't know if anyone else would have had the temperament to deal with the kind of firestorm we're going through right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, you're stepping right into an already stressful situation where you're dealing with things that have never happened before in a lot of ways. So good for him. That's amazing. It's a really tough find, I can imagine. It's a huge feat.
Yeah, but here's the thing. But he's never fronted a band, So I think there's definitely going to be a learning curve there of like going from being the guitar player and not touring for a while and kind of finding his footing there, and that's fine. Like, we'll just go out there. I think the main thing is sound great. That's the main thing, and then everything else I think will eventually fall into place. So we just got to get on the road, and you just got to get the reps. You do it, and but we'll see. We don't know when we're playing, like, because there's legal stuff with that, so we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, what's the band up to? Is it just a holding pattern, just getting prepped and everything, or?
Well, essentially, we've known for a while that 2021 is pretty much off the table. So, everyone's kind of doing different projects, like to kind of get by and make a living, kind of do different things. But there's still a lot of work, with the record in terms of, the record comes out October 29th. So it's social media, it's interviews, it's, all the stuff that goes in with kind of laying out a record and kind of, being connective and being part of that, process. So, and in many ways, I think it's, think about how many bands were going to tour this period of time and then decided not to, be it the Deftones or Limp Bizkit ended up canceling their tour. So I kind of feel like we didn't lose out on too much not touring right now because it's so tumultuous out there. And it just, for me, I think the real benefit is like once the record's out, and then even if we don't tour till, first quarter, second quarter next year, it'll actually really give people time to fall in love with the record and get familiar with it. So by the time we do play, it's like, it's not going to feel like, oh, I just heard the song last week and now they're playing it on stage. They'll have lived with it for 5-6 months. And, I think that's kind of reflective of this time period where we had a year and a half where no one toured, but, records still came out, artists broke, and you had to figure out new ways to promote your music. And we're lucky with the record label we have. They have such a footprint being, with radio and Spotify, playlists and all these things. And honestly, the truth be told too, there's just a lot of people rooting for us out there, which is, is a cool thing. I think all this hullabaloo has kind of created that other narrative of people wanting to see the band succeed despite all odds.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, to continue on with that, I mean, obviously Bad Wolves has been pretty vocal on social media about what the stuff that happened with Tommy. And I'm curious, that as I'm sure a lot of bands go through tumultuous things, how did you come to that decision, collectively or individually of, why to speak out about it? Because that's a tough thing, to become vocal about things that are going on rather than just kind of slipping it under the radar and moving on. And
using a word like abusive is pretty strong. And I mean, and that leads to a lot of different ideas. And it's kind of like, well, can you paint the picture of why? Yeah, I understand where Siobhán's coming from, why you would use a word like that and what it actually connotated, because that's a scary situation, it sounds like.
Tommy hit me. That's abuse. He hit me. He physically assaulted me,
dude.
And I haven't talked about that publicly.
Can you paint that picture for us? I mean, like he just came up and like explained that to us, like humanize the situation.
We got into an argument on the bus about a song, and he hit me, and it was like an open hand, but still enough to bust my lip. It took me to the ground. It was like, because he said he was a god.
He actually said that?
He said, I'm a god, called me a faggot, and then, and while he's raging on top of me, I was like, yo, you gotta hit me, just hit me. Cause I wasn't fighting it. That's the thing about fighting is a lot like sex. It's very different, without consent, it's a different act, right? So like, if I don't agree to fight you, we're not in a fight. You're just assaulting the person, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
So, and I just basically go, and I'm wise on time. I just go, I love you, man. I love you. And he just, that pissed him off. I left. I filed a police report. I left the tour, so, but I literally haven't mentioned that publicly, but that's some of the abuse.
Well, okay. So let me ask you this. Do you think, I mean, that's Look, I'm not defending.
This is April of 2019, by the way.
I'm not defending him at all, but do you think that there's there must be some serious abuse he's come from, or some serious fuckery that's led him to get to that point? Don't you think? Like, I mean, did you see him start to unravel? Because it sounds to me like I've been watching it online. He's unraveling, dude. He's getting to Trapped level.
Well, listen, I don't want to expound on that stuff too much. I feel like I'm in the position where, I have to speak about my experience, and I got to speak for me, and I don't know if this is necessarily the forum to go like all in, because the truth is, if I did the tell all, we'd be here all fucking day. Like, it's so crazy. And I feel like, when you get into that stuff, like I said, it becomes a tit for tat. It becomes, like I said, no matter what I say, if I say anything disparaging, they're in a food fight. They're both bad. Like, it's a very like, well, he said, she said, and it's just a very difficult position, because you don't want to kind of, get involved. Like, I do not want to spend my life talking about negative things. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Or like dwelling on negative things. Like, I want to talk about what's happening now.
Well, it seems like he's codependent and you guys want to move forward, and it's really hard because you can't move forward when your ex-girlfriend's showing up going, "Let me in! Look what you did to me!"
I will not be ignored, Michael. I will not be ignored.
I don't own a gun, nevertheless, many guns that would necessitate a gun rack, Doc.
No, my favorite is actually, remember What About Bob?
Yo, of course.
He goes, "He's never gone. See?" He's right there.
Oh my God, dude. That's craziness.
But listen, some of that stuff I think is just gonna have to work out itself. So and I think in life, when you encounter stuff that's not ideal, the thing you have to hone in on is, what can I control? I can't spend my energy worrying about things I can't control. I can't control other people. I can't control, major events. And so and that's, you got to go, hey, what can I do? Right. So me, like, I made, when we were getting, I don't even know how many people coming to our pages and like saying we stole a song and all this craziness. I made my Instagram private,
Yeah.
Whatever. Is it a big deal? It's not really a big deal, but does it give me a little solace to not have to, and I still got people who follow me coming in telling me all those terrible things I did, and you go, okay, you know what? I'm just going to block you, move on. I'm not going to argue with you. It's not worth the time, because the truth is, someone
posted a meme the other day that said something to the extent of, like, during the 80s, some competitor to McDonald's posted a third of a pound burger versus a quarter pounder, and then Americans wouldn't buy it because they thought they were being screwed because they saw 3 instead of 4. And that's what I feel like arguing with people on the internet is completely a metaphor for. It's like, no, man, I want my quarter pounder. You could fuck your third pounder. I'm just like, dude, I don't even know the metric system.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an impossible battle with people that know nothing about your lives and the situation trying to chime in. And it's really unfortunate. Yeah, it's hard to see, friends going through that.
Well, the funny thing about it, I guess maybe it's the sad part, is the realization of how few fans actually understand the way the music industry works. Like, they don't understand that 9 out of 10 times when artists sign to record labels, the label owns your master recordings, they own your copyrights, and so when someone posts, like the non-official version of stuff, like, that's a crime. It's illegal. You can't do that. Like, and just,
you mean like the FBI warning before all my VHS tapes?
Exactly. Okay. You're not allowed to sell bootlegs of Kill Bill out the trunk of your car. So it's ironic that someone can do that, which is, by the legal version of it, is actually stealing, but we're accused of stealing. So, and especially with that, where it's like, he accuses us of stealing the song, but the only thing he wrote was lyrics that we changed. So he doesn't play an instrument, he doesn't play guitar, so he didn't write the music, he didn't write the vocal melodies, he wrote some lyrics, and we changed those, and he doesn't own the master recordings, he doesn't own the copyright.
He likes to write history.
But somehow it's stolen.
Like China.
Like, what's that?
So he sounds like he likes to write history, like China. He's just going to be like,
Right
you know
history?
what? Doc didn't write this song. I did. And now it's real because he said it in Wikipedia.
Well, yeah. No, but here's the thing.
You didn't write it. I wrote it on Wikipedia. It's real now.
Okay, let him talk, Ben.
No, but I think that's kind of the sign of ultimate power, is being able to shape reality, is going to say, whatever I deem it to be, that's what it is. And the actual facts, and as long as I can convince enough people, then, and that's like kind of the emperor's disease, right? Is that I'm just going to surround myself with yes men who are going to go, hey, the emperor's clothes, right? Like, so, and we're in a post-truth era, right? People don't really fact check things, right? The fact checkers are biased. They're this, it's, there's no objective truth anymore. The truth is, you basically start with a worldview and then you find convenient evidence, cherry pick evidence to back up your original idea. So, it is what it is. But, like I said, I do think over time things will kind of bear out. And I do think also it's still a small minority on the internet. I just don't think if you turn off your phone, if you erase all those social media, the stuff would basically not exist.
Sure.
So it's such a, we're kind of a victim of the moment and the mediums that we feel like, oh, if I'm not on this all the time, I'm not promoting my band, or I'm not being available, and I'm not being present. And it's unfortunate. We're now like, if you say, hey, I don't want the toxic energy of social media in my life, artist manager go, you're lazy. You have to do this. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of, I'm not saying our managers are saying that. I'm just saying, like, if you were an up and coming artist and you had no following, your only way to expose yourself is through social media. It's like a requirement. It sucks.
Well, it's funny you were saying that, because on the podcast I was talking to you earlier, they were saying, like, was it required to be in a band anymore? And I said, are they talking about talent? I said, talent just gets you through the door. Like, one of the things that was very fascinating talking to Dustin, the singer of Starset, was he looked at Ron, the bass player, and the first thing he said was, he's very operational. And he understands how to be strategic, and like he's a logistics guy. So it's like the fact that he's a murderous bass player, who gives a fuck? But the fact that he can look at all the Google Analytics and understand it, he's part of the fucking Starset society. And I'm like, dude, so like you can't just be in a band anymore. Now it's like you have to be a marketing guy, you have to be an engineer guy, you have to be an executive producer, you have to be a producer. You have to make sure that you show up. You have to make sure you have TikTok. You have to make sure you have Instagram, Facebook, MySpace, Friendster. It's like, what the fuck, dude? Way too much shit.
Well, Doc, with everything that's gone down, and obviously still kind of being in the middle of it, is there anything that's like obvious that you've learned personally or professionally that you're gonna kind of take with you moving forward because of everything?
I don't know. I think I think definitely in terms of like how the environment turned to what it did. Like, I feel like anytime you have something that's suboptimal, doesn't go the way you want to, the most important thing is go, what did I do to put myself in the position to end up in a place that was not opportune? So I think that's like where you go learn, okay, why, how do I not put myself in those situations in the future? But it's also, I think it makes me reassess just like what I want in life, right? Like, what do we want out of life? Like, I'm not in a band because it's supposed to be like a battle. I'm in a band, it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be like the cool job, So all these other aspects, they're not cool. It's not cool. So you go, and I've had times in my life where I'm like, yep, I'm good. I'll go bartend. Working, like, there's a lot of solace in working a regular ass job that you're not invested in at all. You never sleep better when you leave, a job that you just don't care about. I have nightmares about the music business all the time, right? And so like I always leave that in my back pocket, that I'll never let this industry hold me hostage, and go like because that desperation that I need a record deal, I need to be on tour, I need to be in a band, people see that and they exploit you. It's a very exploitative industry. And so I, in many ways, I could look at like elements of immaturity in myself and go, that's something I need to work on. But there's elements of always keeping that child's like wonder, and that's like that same kernel of the reason why I started doing this. is the thing I'm going for. Like you want that to kind of pay off, that being in a room with your buddies, making music, playing a show and have that vibe, just that, I don't want to lose that. Like I never want this to just be about money or just about.
One of the things that I think that we've learned to gauge success is the quality of your problems. And I'm sort of curious because first off, you're dealing with a lot of drama very gracefully in the press. And my question becomes, like, there's so many bands that are probably sitting home going, I wish people cared about my singer enough where they'd like listen to my version of my new single versus the other version of that single, and then compare the single to my single, and then write comments about that single, then go look for that single, and then try to download the single, and then decide who's the best guy. Like, is this a good thing in some way, even though you're going through fucking hell? The fact that your band, I listen to that and I go, I'm going to hear this in Walmart and everywhere because that shit is fucking catchy as fuck in the greatest of ways. But like, you're going through hell. Is it worth it? And do you want this attention despite the fact that it's horrifying and toxic?
Well, I think each band member has to decide that for themselves if it's worth it. But I will say this: the opposite of love is not hate; it's indifference. So the fact that there's a passionate response either way means that somehow people are invested in this story, and even a lot of the haters, even a lot of them, I think it's just a snapshot in time because if ultimately, it's like if the burger tastes good, motherfuckers gonna buy it. All right, I know a lot of liberal ass motherfuckers that'll be in that line at Chick-fil-A, eating them hate filled sandwiches. I love it. Al Gore, all right.
You are so right.
So
homophobia never tasted so delicious.
That's right. So if the product is good, right, then people will consume. Like, here's the thing. Our version is the one that's going to be on the radio. Our version is the one that's going to be on Spotify. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on these places. So they're going to hear it. They're going to be familiar with the band. The band ain't going anywhere. So eventually it's this thing of like, I get it. You want to be like vested interest in something. But ultimately, if it's good, people dig it. And by the way, this is a wonderful thing about the world of kind of rock, like big rock music. There's a lot of fans out there. Just because those people don't like you don't mean there's a million more of them out there that'll be totally down for the cause, So, and I'm of the mind this, like, if there were fans of our band who only cared about our singer and didn't care about any of us, why the fuck would I want you to be my fan if you don't care about me? If I'm just like, you're a shitty fan. Like, I don't want shitty fans.
I was going to ask you that.
The customer is not always right, Doc. The customer is not always right.
But really think about that for a second. Like, why would I be upset that someone said they're not going to follow my band because someone else left and they don't care about me? So I'm like, well, then here, man, I'll drive you to the airport.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, bye. Like, why would I? I'd rather have a smaller audience that actually gives a shit about everyone and cares about, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so, that's something, maybe that's a pride thing or just a general like self-respect thing of like, that's fine. And by the way, and I think that's, if you were just purely talking about music, right? It's like, I would never be upset if someone doesn't like my band. Like, everyone has an opinion. It's perfectly fine. Like, if you don't like it, I would never be mad when I was like, I'm not really into the music. I'm not really into the singer. That's fine. That's not even a diss. Just like I'm not into it. That's good. There's tons of things I'm not into.
Polarization, though, because like I'll tell you this right now. I think Tommy has a great voice. He sounded fucking awesome in your band. He sounds like an asshole. Sounds like a guy I definitely don't want to be on tour with. But guess what? I watched the fucking video with DL, and he sounds awesome and left me wanting nothing. In fact, I'm excited to see you guys. Is that opinion that people can have where like, hey, I like the old music, but I'm gonna support these guys anyway because they sound fucking awesome? And guess what? Doc writes the songs.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like I said, I contribute. I would never say I'm the songwriter.
Look at how humble he is.
I help. It's the facts. I'll keep it real. All right. I would never.
Oh, you mean like someone else saying that they took all the credit for writing all your music when they don't write shit?
And here's the thing. I would never, disparage anyone else. I would never say that Tommy isn't immensely talented and have a great voice. I think he's extremely talented, and that's, I would give him the respect that I was not given of denigrating someone else's talent. But then that's a tough thing. I said any band that loses a singer is in for a difficult situation. The good thing though, we only put out 2 records. It's not like we did 10 albums, and it was this big thing. And yeah, I think if I was being objective, I would say, of course, like it was going to be a tough climb because so many people associated the band with him. And so in some ways, I think all the just really divisive activity may have made people more amenable to a singer change than if it had been for more innocuous reasons. So so in some ways it created, like I said, this whole faction of people who were like rooting for us, who maybe, because of all this other really like just terrible culture war.
He vilified himself, so he made it very easy not to like.
Yeah, but I don't get really anyone who gets out on stage, right, and immediately is like going to do a partisan thing and like just alienate half the fans. Like, it's like, I want to see, I went to that Korn Stain show, I'm not going to, and, some people saying things on stage are like, if you don't agree with that politically, then now you just bummed out some of those people there who are there, as opposed to, dude, it's your job to entertain, right? You're not running for office. I'm not running for office. It's not, and it's like the whole point of the rock show is so we can have a refuge from all the bullshit on the internet, not for it to just be an amplification of that. Like, so I really enjoy the shows where it's more about the music, where it's about being together, getting past our differences, not highlighting them. That's what I want. I think there's so much, just a million and one ways to be stressed out in today's day and age that this should be a refuge, and it sucks, man, because you can tell, man, it's like a lot of us, man, they're on Twitter all day, or they're watching weird YouTube videos, or listening to AM radio, and they're just getting pissed off about something, and they need somebody to blame, and I'm with this team, and we're going to kill those, and you don't, it's like, yo, bring it down, bro. Bring it down. Bring it down, baby.
Okay, can I ask you the converse of that, though? Because I feel like, and maybe I'm going to get booed to shit for saying this, but in America, okay, so I love Iron Maiden. I love Iron Maiden unbelievably, but I think that the last few records that they've released have been horse shit. And that basically, because they write long songs, because Bruce Dickinson can sing really awesome and it's all historical, people are just like, yeah! Like the new album, Senjutsu, has 4 out of 5 stars in Rolling Stone, like 9 out of 10. I've listened to it. It's boring. And I love Iron Maiden, but I think what it is that people are so excited, like the old metal community. If you saw the guy wearing the Maiden shirt, you're like, I don't care who he is, what he does, but he likes Maiden, we're friends. So now it's like, if Maiden releases a record, we're just like, oh, we're so happy that Maiden is here. I don't care if it's the same song slowed down and Blaze Bayley singing on it with Bruce and he's flying a turtle. It doesn't matter, it's just Iron Maiden. So now we're rewarding some bands for being mediocre, in my opinion, and they're just doing the same thing over and over because we're just so happy.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
I feel like there's a lot of bands being rewarded for mediocrity.
No. Here's the thing, all right?
Iron Maiden. I love them.
Hold on. You or me or anyone here is not the arbiter of taste, or good or bad, right? Ultimately, it's a meritocracy. So that means Iron Maiden, who just opened up number 3 on the Billboard charts, and sold 60.
Congratulations to those guys, by the way. That's amazing.
Right? The fans decided that they wanted to support the band. We don't get to say how much they like it or what their personal experience with it. Sometimes I know there's certain artists or
I'm the shit fan. Oh my
God. Exactly. No.
I'm the guy you don't want to like your band.
No. But what I'm saying is there's some bands I buy their records sight unseen just because I want to support them. Do you know what I'm saying?
I have Senjutsu.
So there you go. But I know, but then you went and just drugged the damn record on air.
Because I was upset. I'm upset because it's one of those things where it's like, okay, some guy online played one of my favorite songs, 1.25.
How old are you?
38.
38. Okay. 30 more years. Let's see your records then to see how good they are.
Dude, listen,
I'm just saying, do you know how hard it is to make albums?
I'm not going to make it to 30.
I'm just saying. My point is that just the fact, because think about it. Iron Maiden, Metallica, AC/DC, these bands never have to release another album again if they wanted to, right? They do it because they want to. And then the fans go, thank you, we want this. They want new music. And like I said, to each his own.
Well, do you think it's better to burn out or to fade away? Because, like, for example, I'm a big Hunter S. Thompson fan. And I was talking about him last night, and I was like, I wonder what his suicide note was, because I'm weird and I like wanting to Google it. So I'm going to read it to you because he sent it to Rolling Stone, and it's listed as football season is over. And I feel like it's very relevant for this conversation. No more games, no more bombs, no more walking, no more fun, no more swimming. 67. That's 17 years past 50. 17 more than I needed or wanting. Boring. I'm always bitchy. No fun for anybody. 67. You're getting greedy at your old age. Relax. This isn't going to hurt. And that's kind of how I feel about if I was a musician trying to be Nico McBrain.
Okay, can I give you my opinion on Hunter S. Thompson? Brilliant writer, but he was basically, a misanthrope. I mean, he was an extremely cynical person who kind of hated the world and therefore hated himself. And he fucking quit. And he quit on life because he's a fucking quitter. All right.
No, some people know he had a debilitating disease, and he was gonna die. So he just decided to save everyone the grief by shooting himself in the head, and then having Johnny Depp send his ashes into space for $50,000. But I digress.
Okay, so I overstayed the quitter part, but I understand that part. But what I'm saying is, he was a fairly misanthropic person who generally leaned into the, I think there's, and you go back to the 60s and this, like you read his stuff on like the McGovern race and all, like the idea of like crushed hope that, hey, we're through this counterculture, we're going to stop Vietnam and we're going to fix civil rights, right? And they realize, hey, we didn't fix anything. And the war is still going, and all your hope and all your stuff, it doesn't work out. And then what do? You just become cynical, and you go, I can't fix the world. I can't fix myself, so I'm just going to drink and shoot shit out in the fucking woods.
Well, no, but you know what? There's something fun about a guy who's willing to go out in public and admit to killing John F. Kennedy to his son in front of people that are definitely listening to him, and then go through every reason why he did it. That's a certain type of humor that I feel like I need in my life. And granted, I realize he's nihilistic. He's like Nietzsche.
I love him as an individual. Like I put Hunter S. Thompson in this thing. Like I actually had this hero wall, and he was up there, and I took him down because he's not a good person.
No, he was bad, dude. He's a piece of shit.
So it's you can kind of like I respect the rebellious spirit that he represented. It's a big giant glass of fuck you that we can all, like that Bukowski-esque.
There's your title, Cory. Big giant glass of fuck you, Doc Coyle. Colon Tommy Vext.
It's a good summary for this episode.
What we brought up a little while ago, a couple times, Metallica has popped up, and I believe you just wrote a piece on the anniversary of the Black Album. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. My friend Katie Irizarry, who worked with me on the Last Words podcast, which is no longer with us, but she shot me over to the guy at Spin Magazine who's putting together this article. I think it was like 30 artists or something, wrote kind of what the Black Album meant to them. And I kind of try as succinctly as possible, just kind of put why I think the album mattered to me, and why I think somehow that also reflected in just young people and the universality that every day a kid picks up guitar and tries to play Enter Sandman that's 12 years old, and then goes from that, and then they want to start a band, and for some reason it can still have the same impact 30 years later is just insane, and it's just you just can't mess with it. So I'm all about it. And the fact that I didn't even know who was going to be in the article or anything. I saw like Slash was in there and all these big time people like, oh shit, spinmagazine.coil.
You know what I love though is when you talk to old curmudgeons like Paul Lorenzo, our drummer, and he's like, dude, I couldn't listen to anything past like Master or whatever, and he's like, and you hear these differing stories, like the day the Black Album came out was like the blackest day in metal, like in a bad way. Whereas like for me as a child, like, and I still to this day, like I understand why the staunch Metallica freaks might go that was like light, but from I'm a producer, I have to tell everyone that I have to put the disclaimer, I'm a producer, but from a production standpoint alone, that is one of the greatest albums of all time, and it took metal to a place where like 12, 13-year-old children would never have heard it. And I just remember like Optimus Prime breaking and fucking chasing James Hetfield and like things flight. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? And there's an old man and I'm hearing harmonies and I'm like, what the fuck is this? And it was one of the first records I literally like went to the store and looked for because it absorbed my being. And to this day, I think it's one of the best sounding records that every time I want to check out speakers, I put on Enter Sandman because that song is sonically fucking perfect.
Agree?
There you go. You answered the question. It's interesting to hear because I didn't grow up listening to Metallica, and so many of the people that we talked to, especially in rock and metal, they were a huge influence. So I always love hearing what it was about them that moved people, because it seems like, to my friends were like the Bach and Beethoven to me, like the people that were groundbreaking and like really inspired me to do something.
Have you listened to the Black Album, Siobhán?
I've listened to parts of it. I haven't listened all the way through, so I need to have an evening with
That's
Metallica.
adorable.
See those speakers behind you, Brock's nice
I know.
focals? You need to crank that shit and just listen all the way through.
I'm gonna do that
Right in
after
the
this.
sweet
and
spot.
crush beers the entire time.
So
Yes.
listen to this, and I'll say this, and Doc obviously knows this, and this has been said a million times, but this is an example of the difference between analog and digital. So like one of the cool things about this record is it was made at a time where there was still a lot of analog stuff being done, but basically the way the album was recorded, it sounds sonically perfect. And if you watch how it was made, and for fuck's sake, that sounds like the most difficult album ever made. Like they did everything they could to make it sound awesome. And when I used to work at a Best Buy and I would try to sell $10,000 speakers, I would just say, do you like Metallica? Stand right there. And every single time, once the fucking drums came in, I would sell those speakers, or they'd go over and get denied at the fucking credit card place because their credit sucked. But that's not my fault. Metallica sold it 100% of the time, 8 times out of 10.
Listen, you don't gotta sell me, man. Listen, it's part of my personal autobiography, and it's it feels almost like, I don't know, part of like my skin or my DNA. It's just like, it's the best. It's the best, and it's cool. Like, listen to the covers and stuff that people are doing, and I love. I'm a very like the type of person. Any type of work that is impactful and kind of how like certain things age very well with time, or sometimes they don't get almost better. Like certain films you watch, like it almost gets better with time. And I love just going through it and trying to figure out why, right? Have those conversations. Why? What is it about this? What can you learn from that? And I love things that are just kind of a snapshot in time that you could never remake, right? Because the gear is different, and every little component to make things, whether that's an old film or an old song or an old record. I just love that stuff. I love getting into the weeds and being nerdy.
Yeah.
Are there any other records from your youth or your developmental musical stage that you still kind of fall back to, like the Black Album? Anything on that level?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much always am like, I like, if I'm driving, I'll go, what's one of my favorite albums I haven't listened to in a while? And so like, yesterday it was like Mars Volta, Deloused in a Comatorium, or like day before that it was Portishead live at Roseland, or not long ago I was just listening to Pearl Jam 10 like over and over again.
Do you still have your CD book in the back of your car?
No, my CD book actually got stolen. Back
Shit,
in like
dude.
99 with 2 guitars at a bar. So it was like the giant CD book. I mean,
Yep.
So I do have some. I still have some of like my old CDs, probably Black Album included. I got rid of everything, but I kept like just a handful of very sentimental CDs. But I love that because there's just something about, and especially once you get to my age, you have that thing of, hey man, times are just simpler, man. I tell you.
It's funny you say that. So
Absolutely.
We were smoking grass, and
I have to tell you about a moment, because this happened to me recently, and it was really.
All right, well, Ben, this is the end of the episode, so make it quick.
So it's my rant. So I went and saw Garbage and Alanis Morissette, and Alanis Morissette was doing Jagged Little Pill, and I loved that fucking record. I loved that record. I loved everything about that record. I really did. It changed my life. Glenn Ballard, it made me go, who's a producer? What does he do? How did he make this Alanis girl awesome? Is it Alanis? Is it Alanis? And I went and saw Alanis Morissette with Garbage, and I hadn't seen a show in a long time. I saw Guns N' Roses recently, but this was like the first show I feel like I was actually surrounded by a lot of people. And Shirley Manson came out on stage and she saw all the people out there and you could see her eyes well up. And she's like, I haven't seen a crowd like this in a long time. She's like, it's not like this all the time. And I started to cry because I felt cathartically like in touch with her. That like she's watching out like and like she's trying to explain to people like it isn't always like this. Not everyone's always this excited, and how happy she was to be there, and they sounded so good. And then when Alanis Morissette came out on stage, I didn't notice that there was lights. Like somebody complained that there wasn't a lot of lights or this. I just listened to the songs. And I was so transfixed. I remember being in my grandfather's chair in Chicago, Illinois, like just sitting there looking at my Discman, the LED light behind the Discman, and just pressing rewind and listening to the songs over and over and over. And I hadn't felt like that in 20 years. And I didn't realize, because I was crying, like how much I actually needed music and how much it actually bothered me that I hadn't been out. And it took Alanis Morissette and Shirley Manson to show me that like I really was missing that, and to see them feel the same way with a whole audience there.
Can I say something about that era? Like I think, especially like I said, of course we have that nostalgia thing, but there's something about the 90s. It's kind of that last era, 90s, early 2000s, where recordings, like big major label recordings, still sounded really organic, real drums, like a lot of single vocals, right? Not a lot, like with not a lot of layering. And when you kind of compare that to modern pop music, I was watching the VMAs last night, and you might as well call it the solo artists, good-looking solo artists with big butts, who are lip syncing with dancers, like because it's in popular music, it's so completely varied from that point that I feel like people like myself feel a refuge when you listen to an Alanis Morissette record.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's a person in a room. It's not like this plugin and this thing and auto-tune and all this stuff that feels so impersonal. And so I think that what defines that era was vulnerability. Like that was the era that kind of killed the rock star, because the first time rock stars were like, no, I'm a piece of shit and I'm depressed and I'm on heroin and it got like, we're not going to dress like rock stars or wear like this granny fucking sweater and so it kind of killed the rock star. But there's something true to that era that just feels like, man, this is the last gasp of that thing, that authenticity. So that's something that I tend to go back towards and want to be in that energy.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna expect some very raw, organic Bad Wolves coming soon. Is that what we're gonna say?
Bad Wolves don't make records. Listen, Bad Wolves is not that band. We're definitely much more in the kind of hot, like very produced sound. That's definitely.
Is it more You Ought to Know or Hand in My Pocket?
None of that, man.
All right.
New school,
and we can't wait to hear more from you guys. So as we wrap up this part one with Doc, thank you for joining us again. Thank you for
so
opening
much,
up.
man.
Thank you for opening up and kind of like giving us a peek into what's going on. Obviously we're seeing everything just through the blogs and stuff.
Thank you. Wait till people pick this up, and then I get a call from my label. Hey man, saying shit.
We have great news. We have 7 followers, and they're all related. They're our parents, so I wouldn't worry too much.
Hey, no. You know what? I knew we made it today on 2020 because when I went to Ultimate Guitar, they actually transcribed me talking about misogyny. Me, not even our guests. Me talking about misogyny.
That's what I was referring to earlier when I was.
And I'm like,
mentioning
you know
that.
what? I'm like, the fact that a stenographer got paid from Ultimate Guitar to go through my misogyny / massage with a happy ending joke and write that out so my mom could then write good job and then repost it was worth everything.
So stay tuned.
Anyway, stay tuned. Thanks to Doc for stick around for part 2. You've been 2020.
Doc Coyle on Instagram. And where can we find the Bad Wolves online? Is it badwolves.com? Is it the real Bad Wolves? Like, where's the real Bad Wolves reside?
No, ours is actually, I'm looking at the site now. What is it? That's a good question. What was Bad?
I don't know.
It was our regular website, excuse me, is badwolvesnation.com. But I guess check this out. The pre-order is badwolves.ffm.to/Dear Monsters. And you can pre-order all the vinyl and then the signed version of the record and all that stuff. So just Google it.
We'll put a link in the description.
Yeah. By the way, the vinyl, even though we can pre-order it now, it's probably not going to show up till 2022. It's a big back order.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We know.
Stay tuned later this week with Doc Coyle on 2020.
You know, I'll tell you, one of the proudest moments that I ever had as an entertainer was going on stage in a casino and playing a set that was 45 minutes and walking off the stage and realizing that we only played 2 songs. And in the course of 45 minutes and 2 songs, nobody left. And I thought that to me was success. Like, we entertained this crowd, nobody left, we played 2 fucking songs. So that meant for fucking 38 minutes, we fucking just bullshitted with people, and they were entertained enough not to throw anything at me or leave the fucking audience. So to me, that was cool. Like, if you've got that tool, then do it. You know?